Welcome to our house, the House of Fi. At the House of Fi, we are all about achieving financial independence for families. Wherever you are in your financial independence journey, we want our house to be a place where you can learn and get inspired. If you are a parent on the journey to Fi, then come on in. We're glad that you're here. Here are your hosts, Wendy and Tamika.
Hey everyone, before we get into the show, I just wanted to remind you of a couple of things. Have you signed up for our private Facebook group yet? If you haven't yet, you should. It's a place where Tamika and I can talk to you about anything you want to talk about from our episodes. And if you're liking the show, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a written review over on iTunes or Stitcher or any of the other mediums that you found our show on. Now, finally, we have this awesome 7-step money challenge course that we would love for you to join us. It's 7 steps over the course of 21 days, and it will lay the foundation for the future that you dream of. Now, I hope you enjoy this show. Hey, House of Fi family. Today we are all about inspiration. We are going to be talking with Dan Shaw, and he is a member of our community. And the reason that we chose to bring Dan on the show is that he made a post, and you just have to listen to his post. He says, 4 years ago, watching my girls play in the surf at Lake Michigan after some world-class BS at work, I made myself a promise that I would retire as soon as I possibly could. I never would have dreamed that I could get there in just 4 years. I fired today. I had the rentals, had the max savings at 66%. I had the side hustle, remodeling real estate, had the puffed up 403B. But before Fi, I was still blowing through money like a sailor on shore leave. I grew up poor, so cutting back was just like putting on an old, comfortable suit again. Flipping that one last switch has now brought me 6 years at home with my oldest and 10 years at home with my youngest. The fire is spreading all around us. When Tamika and I saw that message, we knew that you all needed to hear from Dan as well. We hope that you find his story just as inspiring as we did. Now, I will tell you that the sound on this one is a little bit off. We did have some technical difficulties during recording, but it's still a great show. Please bear with us. We cleaned it up as best we could. We hope you still enjoy it. Now, here's the show.
Well, and with that, Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and talk with you guys today.
We're excited to talk with you. You know, both Tamika and I had seen a post that you had done in another group, and when we saw your story, we just knew that we had to talk with you because after I read it, it was so inspiring, but I was also like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions for you.
Good.
So why don't we start with, why don't you just tell us first just a little bit about who you are and maybe just a little bit of your money story.
Okay, sure. Well, I am a dad. I guess that first and foremost, as the kind of House of Fi for families, that's a big part of what's brought me here into the kind of zone of financial independence. I had a career as a teacher and a developer of writing tests. I'm actually a writing assessment professional and an artificial intelligence researcher. I worked at one of the biggest and best educational assessment companies in the country, ACT. I've worked there for 15 years. I had a great career full of ups and some downs, but it set me off on a path to financial independence that I'm really grateful for. And now that I'm staying at home, I've got 6 years with my oldest daughter, who's entering into 7th grade, Avery. And my youngest daughter is in 3rd grade, Saylor, and she's 8. So I'll have 10 years at home with her. You know, probably the biggest teaching challenge of my life will be working with them and kind of showing them the ropes of the world and being a teacher with them. So, you know, that's the broad strokes of kind of who I am and how I got here.
Well, what I wanted to know is because there was a lot in just in what you just said, but one of the things that I want to get to the fact that you are Fire now, but I also want to go back into kind of what your history was. In this post, that you made, you talked about how you had already been saving really well, but the one piece of it that was missing was the frugality and kind of maybe tightening your belt a little bit.
Right.
But that you grew up poor, and so that wasn't hard for you to do. Can you tell us just a little bit about what it was like for you growing up and kind of what your experiences were with money growing up?
Oh, sure. Taking it back, I grew up in Maine and then a little bit in Georgia after a while. My dad was the income winner in the family, and my mom stayed at home. I was actually homeschooled for a couple of years earlier in the elementary years in Maine by my mom and my dad both. My parents weren't great with money, but they weren't terrible. We always had a roof over our heads and plenty of food to eat, and they had really strong values about education and making something of yourself and hard work and, being good to other people. So I really got a lot of great things from my parents, but money savvy was not kind of at the top of their list of strengths. So we just didn't really have a lot of money. I knew growing up that if I was going to go to college, it was going to be me paying for it. So I paid attention in class. I was always a really good learner. And I kind of carried that natural curiosity and that kind of skill of learning pretty easily, throughout my life, and kind of built an educational career and then subsequently a professional career off of that. But, I did learn a lot of great things about getting what you need in creative ways, not necessarily having to have a lot of extras. We didn't have necessarily the right boots and the right coats and the right brands on our clothing, but we made do, so we did what we could with the income we had, and, we got by. But, I wanted more for my kids as they got older, so I put a lot of effort into, creating a financial stability for them. Whether it was through, investments or real estate and house hacking, buying homes and remodeling them and turning them into rentals. I wanted to give them some opportunities that maybe I didn't have growing up, with so much focus on kind of having to provide for myself and having to kind of build my own foundation. So that was definitely a big part of my driver for being a max saver and studying investments, learning as much as I possibly could about tax optimization and rental real estate and landlording and all those things. And that kind of drew me into the community, the financial independence community, but of course the landlords, the bigger pockets folks, the landlord legal podcasts, just a whole wealth of different communities of interest out there that really have a tremendous amount of knowledge and information that you can leverage to build financial stability.
I completely agree, and it's so interesting that once we have our children and, they're there watching us and we're there being an example for them, that it leads us into some of these other opportunities and areas of learning. So you mentioned something. You mentioned that you grew up poor and that you had to relearn frugality. Did you have to relearn that frugality because you had experienced lifestyle creep, or because you're saying that you were never actively taught frugality?
No, I definitely was taught the frugal side of things growing up, because we just, we had to make a dollar stretch in our house. So it was definitely a way of life that I was very familiar with, and when I got to school, I was on scholarship and, kind of paying my own way. So I had to make the dollar stretch still. I went straight into grad school and I started teaching English at the University of Georgia. And so I was a research assistant, very low salary. Then I became an adjunct faculty, very, very low salary. You teach a full course load, 4 classes a semester, $16,000 a year. I mean, really just a pretty bare stipend to get by on. And my wife that I met in grad school was in the same boat. She was also an adjunct professor at University of Georgia with me teaching English. And so we, kind of came up together in a frugal mindset, and that was kind of the basis of our lifestyle and the basis of our, approach to our household finances. So I think that was a really important part of being able to come back to that later in life. The unusual thing I'd say that happened to us is about halfway through my career, we had kind of a corporate shakeup, I guess you'd say. Our chief competitor, the SAT folks, came in and basically raided some of the core leadership of ACT to start their own test development company, department at SAT to redesign the SAT, including my wife and my boss at the time. So as all these folks were kind of heading across town to start up their own test development company department, my salary doubled overnight because I stayed behind and became a leader, assistant vice president in our test development group. My wife's salary doubled overnight as she went to start her own writing assessment group over at SAT and redesign their tests. So we suddenly experienced a doubling of our salaries. And we had some really, tough decisions about what are we going to do with that extra money. Now we have a set financial stability, but what do we want to do with that? Do we want to just, start buying extra houses and boats and jet skis and living the high life, or do we want to invest that money? And we decided to go down the investment path and try to set a stable foundation for our future.
I can't imagine what that must feel like for both of your salaries to double. Hearing SAT and ACT over and over again is really giving me the shakes because I just remember taking those tests. I took both of them.
Right.
But it's really awesome to hear the background of how all of that was, everything that was going on over the years behind the scenes. It's very interesting. When you were looking for the thing to do with the money, how did you figure it out? How did you figure out investments were the way to go? Where did you go first? Was it books? Was it podcasts? Was it the internet? What were the steps that people can go to if something like this were to happen to them?
I'd say it was very much internet focused, and my history of learning about finances goes back to the 90s and radio programs that then became podcasts, like Clark Howard, for example. He's kind of a consumer advocate and kind of finance expert, and I listened to that constantly while working in the wood shop and doing work around the house, and just having a kind of a stream of information going as you do, daily manual tasks. That was a big source of education for me, was finding the right first radio broadcast at the time and then segueing into podcasting, but also the blogs. Of course, a lot of us have seen the progression of the blog since 2012 with Mr. Money Mustache and the early retirement extreme folks and some of the early pioneers of financial independence. And I caught a little bit of that as I was going along, but mostly I came through it through the rental side, through landlording and trying to find out more information about how to optimize taxes from a landlord perspective. And we had even kind of backed into that, as an investment strategy as well. My father-in-law, he had some rental properties, and he was kind of egging us on to, hey, you should take your house. We bought a new house and we moved to have enough space for my wife to have a home office. So we bought a new house across town, and we were trying to sell the old house, and it just never sold. We had it under contract for a while, and then that fell through, and we suddenly had lost a season of selling out here in the cold Iowa winters. And so we just kind of backdoored into renting it. And then once we started renting it and I saw all the advantages from just a financial perspective about building that asset and that value, that passive income stream, we kind of got the fever there, and we bought the house next door to ours with our in-laws, and we started remodeling that and kind of sprucing it up to increase the passive income flow, being able to rent the upstairs, downstairs duplex next door. And so we just started to add a couple properties and, really came through it as a strategy for building passive income with our rental real estate properties. I didn't have a lot of faith that the stock market was just going to continue forever and ever. So I didn't want to put all of our money into this bull market that was going on at the time. And I kind of wanted to split the difference, have half in real properties that we could control and manage and improve, and then have half of our investments riding that bull market quite favorably over the last 10 years has certainly been a big part of it as well. But to your original question, I would definitely point to the internet and to podcasts as a key source. I started listening to podcasts back in 2005, 2006. I've really been just a huge fan all the way. I think that's the future of education.
So, Dan, I want to go back to kind of that time where you're kind of accidentally now landlords and have this investment property. Where kind of were you in the stage of what is now your FI journey? Because if I'm understanding your story, you didn't find the financial independence movement until a little while later. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And really, just from terms of kind of a net worth perspective, we were pretty much flat even at that point. We had been, covering our house payments and, making our cars stretch for 10, 15 years and, just kind of staying even with things until that sudden kind of burst in income about 5 years ago. And so our FI journey hadn't really taken off at all. We had just been kind of socking away a little bit of money each month for our retirement accounts, in kind of our 403B plans at work. So I would say we were very naive from a FI perspective back then. And it was really that entree into the rental property world and universe, checking out podcasts, seeing the tax strategies around it, getting a little into, Mad Fientist and Justin from Root of Good and some of the approaches that they took towards tax optimization. That really kind of drew me in to a broader set of strategies around different retirement vehicles and life hacks. And, that's when it really opens up to a kind of a full suite of different strategies, little tips like travel hacking, or whether it's, maximizing your food budget, all these things that so many people have so much time and attention into kind of perfecting these approaches to stretching the dollar and to maximizing your investment strategies for the future. It really kind of sunk in over the last 4 or 5 years, I'd say.
Wow, I am just blown away. One of the things that Wendy and I have actually been talking about recently has been real estate, and both of us are considering what to do with our properties and what to do next in terms of either paying them off, getting rental income. And so one thing that you said that I have been trying to figure out right now is, you said I didn't want to put everything into the bull market, so you kind of did a half in one and half in the other. So as you're deciding how much, is there anything that you can tell us about how much to put in and how to still optimize the tax while you decide not to put in the money pre-tax? In other words, right now I pay very little in terms of tax. I save so much in retirement that is not, my tax rate is pulled very low.
Nice.
Compared to what it is if I don't save that money.
Right.
However, what that does is it restricts how much cash you have in terms of your monthly, yearly cash flow. So now if I want to purchase a home, I could, one, pull out equity and purchase a home that's a rental, or I could stop saving so much in retirement accounts, readjust all of my withholdings, and build up enough to make a huge down payment.
Right.
So what were some of the things that you had to think about and that our listeners should think about and that I should think about if I decided to go down the real estate route?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to be able to sit here and claim that I had this, really refined strategy and calculation for exactly how much to put in and when to time it. But I really think it was more haphazard than that. I always wanted to max out our retirement accounts, but we had, with an elevated income level, you're kind of restricted in how much you can put away in either in traditional retirement accounts or even pre-tax and certainly Roth. It wasn't even until just a couple of years ago that I was able to do a Roth 403B and start to add an extra $18,500 through that vehicle. So I really just maxed out every pre-tax opportunity that we did have, and in our income bracket. And whenever new ones came available, like the Roth 403B, which was great, I would max that out for the year as well. And then I just wanted to put everything else into the homes that we have and kind of improving them, fixing them, repairing them, and building them as assets. And what that does, fortunately, for every kind of dollar you're putting into your home, our former home in this case, whether it's fixing the roof or replacing the air conditioner or just, the boiler, bringing systems up to date and current so you don't have to worry about them for another 20, 25 years. Well, those are business deductions. And so that really helps, not just wipe out the passive income that you're getting from the rental property, but really get, carry over passive losses. I think I have $30,000, $40,000 in carry over passive income losses just from continuing to pour that money back into the properties that we have and fixing them up, which of course also increases the rent you can charge. We took one property from about $1,300 a month in rental to over $2,000. just by, again, remodeling the downstairs bathroom that didn't have a shower. It just had some weird tub stuck under a butler's pantry. And so I put in a real shower, or I updated the upstairs kitchen and totally revamped it with new cabinets and counters. And fortunately, that's stuff I love to do. I love to go into an old house and start tearing open walls and building stairs and remodeling things. So it was a nice dovetail between things that I really have a passion about, which building stuff and understanding house systems, and then also treating that as a investment opportunity to build wealth for the future and a passive income stream that can sustain us into retirement.
I'm glad that you mentioned that last little part about passive income that can lead us into basically financial independence, because I know that there's almost two camps in the FIRE community. There are people who have this FI number who look to saving a certain dollar amount to get them to this number that will then sustain them via their passive income from their investments into an early retirement. But there's also this other camp who says, that number is not so important. What is more important is the actual passive income that you create for yourself. And so I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit about that. It sounds like you're almost in both, that you do have this buildup of these investments that you have waiting for you, but in the meantime, are you using the rentals as your sole source of passive income?
Well, and I think there are so many different ways to put together these different elements to get income streams or to have your wealth be building that I would hesitate to put myself in one camp and say, no, you got to do it this way versus the other way. I think as long as you're finding, a mix of these approaches and strategies that works out in your situation, that's what's really the goal. I sometimes feel like, or I worry that some of the things that I've done don't translate broadly to the wider group in the FI community, just because our income was so high. We don't need the passive income at this point. We can afford to just shuffle it all back into building up our houses. Even now we still have my wife's, 6-figure income to rely on as our, kind of covering our bills for our spending over the year. So we don't have to rely even on the investments that we've made in our 403Bs or in our passive income from real estate at this point. We're just covering our assets or our spending in the course of a year with her income. So I'm a little reluctant to come down, too precisely on this is the plan that will work for everyone, when I know that it's, just a set of strategies that we've put together that fit our situation. Like, I don't have to worry about health insurance on the markets and figuring out what the next phase of Obamacare is going to look like, from a legislative standpoint, because we still have that really important prong of the FIRE lifestyle already provided from my wife's work. So it's tricky for me to give kind of prescriptions for this is the path to go down for a lot of people, just because we were so fortunate with our, kind of high income streams, that the money just kind of flowed in and we could put it in a lot of different places without really facing a lot of repercussions.
Well, I think that's a great point, is that there is no one way. That, what one person does for them based on their circumstances, that's great. But if you can, figure out the best way that works for you and get there as quickly as possible, that's wonderful. That's what it's all about.
Well, I don't want to leave, the folks without any kind of concrete or practical advice. I will say I did come across the kind of what was described to me as the holy grail of rental real estate strategies. It was some podcast about legal landlord law, or maybe it was Bigger Pockets. Somewhere in there in the podcast mix was this real estate professional provision. And so this became the basis of my strategy for retiring, was that I was going to qualify as a real estate professional for tax purposes with my real estate business. And then that allows, once you meet the qualifications of spending more than half of your time on real estate activities throughout the course of your work year, and you work more than 750 hours in the real estate business, that allows you to take your business deductions, apply them to your spouse's income. So there are quite a few rental real estate professionals out there who have a high income earning spouse, and they're able to really cut down their federal tax burden using expenses from the real estate side of their income. So that's one particular strategy that has really just opened up a lot of doors for us, being able to take all the business deductions that I have for my real estate business and apply those to my wife's income as well to take down that federal tax burden. So I've really embraced a kind of a tax optimization strategy. I paid $100,000 in taxes last year, and that was basically what my take home was as well. So I was essentially, every dollar that was coming in for me to spend on our family, I was turning around and giving it to the tax man. And I knew that there was there was some room in there for improvement and some better approaches to optimize taxes, all completely legal according to the code. But there are so many different ways to leverage real estate investments from a tax perspective that it made it less necessary for me to bring in so much income.
And so when you say real estate professional, are you saying that you have a license to sell real estate?
No.
Or are you saying that because of the properties that you manage for yourself, that qualifies?
It's a particular designation in the tax code that applies to anyone involved in the construction trades as long as they own 5% or more of the business. So it could be a tradesperson, it could be just carpentry, it could be rental real estate, it could be buying and selling houses or house flipping. There's a whole host of activities that qualify for it. But it's really just trying to ensure that that is your main focus. That's the main source of your income, is from the real estate trades. And once you do that, all of your business deductions or your paper losses in your business no longer become passive income losses that just roll over from year to year, but you can actively deduct them from your overall household income for your federal income returns. So that's what allows us to kind of open up my wife's federal income adjusted AGI and start to knock that down with deductions from the business. So it's just a particular designation within the tax code. Yeah.
That is awesome.
It's a great hack.
So all of this to say that you have done a great job, you and your wife, and now you have 2 children, right?
Yes, 2 daughters.
So yeah, 2 little girls. And so can you talk to us a little bit about some of the ways that you're helping your children to, just in terms of the legacy that you guys have created and are building for yourselves and for your family? What do you see as the legacy you're building for them, and how do you let them know and pay attention to what you're doing as you're doing it, and what is your hope for them in the future when it comes to fire, working, all of these things?
Wow, those are really great questions. My mind is going in a lot of different directions. But I'm really glad you raised that, though, because that was a major part of my kind of final decision making to pull the trigger to go fire. Was I really did not like the values that I was seeing develop in my daughters around money. We just had so much money flowing in, and I was contributing to this. I was absolutely culpable in not being frugal, not being respectful of the value of a dollar. That I could see, once I saw them growing up and not treating the dollar with respect and just thinking that money flows like a river and it's there when you need it, that really got me to thinking about what kind of life am I setting them up for if we continue along this kind of, it's not a lavish lifestyle by any means, but just always having money there for anything that they might want to do or anything they might want to spend it on. And that really kind of snapped me to attention about what values we were setting them up for. And frankly, I was interested in bringing our income down. Now, once I knew that we had the numbers to make it work from a long-term retirement perspective and that we had the net worth that we needed to sustain that future, I really didn't want there to be as much money flowing around them. And I really wanted to set about teaching them the kind of lessons I grew up about stretching a dollar or respecting its value or respecting the hard work that needs to go in to earning that dollar and then spending it. So I've really focused a lot on giving them opportunities to do some work around the house and earn their own money, and having a little bank of dad that they can get some interest on. They get 10% interest at the end of the month if they save their money that they've earned through various jobs around the house. We're remodeling our house, so there's always plenty of work to be done in something to clean up or something to work on. So really a big part about my decision to retire from the corporate world and from W-2 income was about teaching them maybe a more centered way of life, a little bit more down to earth, and a little bit more respectful of the value of a dollar. So with a household income that's cut in half, you suddenly have to make that money stretch more, and you have to be more respectful, and you have to start making your Starbucks frappes at home in the blender. So it's just a nice dovetail with the lessons I kind of picked up from the Choose FI podcast about frugality and various other, kind of frugal bloggers out there. It's those lessons that I feel like I'm able to be more authentic with them and kind of drive those home. So it's a big part of what I'm trying to instill in them and teach them. How did I get here? Why is Dad able to retire at 43 and stay at home with you and coach your softball team and be around and be there and kind of help you make your way through life? Well, it's because I did this, and this. And so I do talk to them quite a bit about my investment strategies. I know a lot of it goes over their head, but at least I'm setting the foundation for conversations in the future about how they can be second generation FI and how they can achieve what they want to do in a similar fashion.
Wow. Wendy and I also, over the past 6 months to a year, just being together, we've figured out a format where we can send each other a quick chat and just say, okay, you next.
Oh, cool.
So that we're not always constantly talking over each other. And we're just, I just wrote, wow, he's awesome.
Oh, you're too kind. You guys are awesome too. That's what's great about this community is everybody does their little part and shares their insights that they've cultivated and share it with each other. It's just such a mutually supportive, educating community. I just love it.
I was just going to say that, it's just whatever in that person's story that somehow is a light bulb for you, or that makes you think that, okay, whereas maybe before you felt a little hopeless about your situation, you can look at that other person and say, wow, their situation isn't too far different from what mine is, and look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so that's what I just love so much about this community and this movement, is that it's really this feeling of let's just bring along as many people as we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to share what's worked for me. I want to know what's worked for you. I want to know what's worked for this other person. That was kind of really the impetus for Tamika and I starting this podcast, is that we just knew that there were other moms and dads out there like her and I that, we just want to have a better life for our kids.
Yeah.
It's really just about how do we move our family forward so that we can, not have to work so much. We could spend more time with them, that we don't have to see them saddled with the student loan debt that maybe we had. So it's just been an amazing experience. And so we're glad to have found you, because your story is incredible. And
well, thank you. And I like what you say about having more time to spend with your kids. As I look back at my time working, I'd working 60, 70-hour weeks sometimes as an executive and double booked all day long, and then coming home and remodeling houses in the wee hours, of the night. I was not, giving my kids the time they needed with me. My youngest daughter, didn't really know me as well as my oldest daughter, but, because of that, I had so much time away from them. And that's another thing I really wanted to rectify by being at home and spending time on the family and being, in many ways, stay-at-home dad who supports the house, manages the house, rebuilding the house, but also the actual household and supporting them in the things that they want to do. And I've really noticed a difference since the 3-4 months that I've had at home. I just have a much better connection and relationship with their daily lives and what they're all about.
I think that we can all understand and feel exactly what you must have been going through, because we've all experienced it. I have the side business, I have, my main job and everything, and then the goal is always in the background to be with them, to be with your family that brings you so much happiness, and to just take that little bit of time out to set it all up so that it actually works long term. So that it's not just a quick vacation, or that it's not just a Christmas break or whatever, but that it's a long term, stable time together. So how is your wife's role playing into this, and what is her plan for work, for staying home? Do you both need to stay home? Is it okay if one of you does? What is the plan when it comes to her and you?
So I have tried to convince her to retire, and I am having no luck at all so far. She loves her. She loves her job. She loves the group that she set up. She took some of our key people with her over to SAT. Actually, a lot of people from ACT went over there. So while her kind of job fortunes and the community that she has over there really are top-notch, successful, some of our really good friends, the kind of opposite happened to me at about the same time, and a whole new leadership came in at ACT and made my job just no good at all. Really kind of took a dramatic turn for me where it wasn't rewarding anymore, and I wasn't in the role that I had built, over a 10-year career. So for her, it was, a really positive situation, and she wants to continue that, and I'm all for that. It's actually this weird situation where I have expertise that helps her, her work, her company. We worked together for 10 years at ACT, working on writing assessment together. At some point in the future, I may, continue to contribute to her team. Instead, I have some non-compete clauses, and I can't work for any competitors for a year. I have to kind of restrain myself from getting too much into that, just because there's some legal documents and restrictions on what I can do in the industry for the next year. But ultimately, I could see us, kind of joining forces again, whether it's me consulting with them. I've done some artificial intelligence research where we've taught computer algorithms to score essays better than I can teach humans to. So there's some exciting prospects still in the future that I can help support her work, even from a professional standpoint, while also supporting the house. So I think she's really excited about those parts of it, but I think she's less excited about the retire idea. I haven't really sold her a vision, or even kind of brought her to the point where she sees a vision for herself as a retired person this young. She's only a year older than me. We're both still in our early 40s. So she doesn't want to quit working. And, if that's a great situation for her where she's getting self-actualization and professional success and having a great time doing it, why the heck would she stop? So in many ways, this is me being able to help support the family in the house and get some of those things in order while she continues on to have the kind of career heights that I already was able to have at ACT.
And it's funny that you say that, and it's wonderful that she knows that she doesn't want to stop right now, and that she's still able to find happiness and fulfillment even while figuring out what her dream really is, and maybe that is her final dream. We spoke to Michelle from Michelle is Money Hungry a couple of episodes ago, and she said something that I thought was really awesome, which is that she was already living her FIRE life. She just didn't have the FI part, and she's working towards that part. And so it just reminds me of what you're saying with your wife. She's already happy in the situation that she is, and therefore, isn't it just that much better that she has FI behind it? It's just awesome.
I agree. I think it's so hard in this day and age to have two career families and try to keep a household going and kids on track. I think that is so much stress on a family to be going that many directions at once. I think it's been a nice exhalation and breath of fresh air to not have to have both of us, gone all week and having our attention kind of and our energy, spread so thin. So that's a big part of it. The other side, I think that she doesn't quite 100% fully either trust or grasp that FI concept. She's not a money person by any means. She has zero interest in any of this. So when I say, hey, I want you to retire, she's like, there's no way that can happen. There's no chance. So I'm kind of slowly bringing her along with some podcasts, and I'm following all the recommended guidance of people of, how do you get your spouse into this? She's got some really strong money strengths. She's, great at earning money. She's great at frugality, at kind of not spending a lot of money, but she has so little interest in finance and savings and retirements. Her eyes glass over within like 2 minutes of me trying to talk to her about it. So, and then she's supportive of it completely, but she just doesn't care, doesn't want to know, just kind of trust me on the numbers side of it. So that may be playing some role in it too. She wants to see it before she believes it.
Well, that there's this common thread that I'm finding, and I think that Wendy notices it too. When we speak to people in this journey, a lot of the early converts are naturally curious people.
Yeah.
And I know you said that about yourself as well. I mean, you have an English background, but you're all into this AI stuff. So I'm wondering, is he just learning this on his own? Like, is he just pursuing the knowledge? So I think that you have the inclination to be more, dig into the numbers and dig into all of the information behind the scenes. Maybe she is, maybe she's not. But I do want to ask if that's something that you are you're with your children. You say you speak to them about the things that you're going through. Are they naturally curious as well? Or is that something that you try to instill in them? Are any of them, more inclined to be FI and FIRE?
Yeah, they're both still pretty young. I mean, they're 12 and 8, but definitely I got their attention when I said, hey, guess what, guys? I'm not going to work anymore. I'm going to be at home, building the house and doing fun stuff with you all the time. That really caught their attention of like, oh, wow, that's like a possibility. And the other great thing is that 7th grade brings pre-algebra. And so every night with my 7th grader, we do about an hour of algebra homework, ratios, percentages. And of course, all the examples that I'm going to bring up are about investing and about you have rental property this. And so I really contextualize a lot of the math lessons that they're learning with, the kind of concepts that have made our financial independence lifestyle possible. And so I'm just trying to slowly introduce them to the concepts at this point. Right now they don't have the motivation to be financially independent or even to think about what a career looks like, from their perspective. They're just kind of getting a sense of, well, what does it mean to be a photographer, or what does a celebrity do? They really have some pretty rudimentary concepts of career and industry. But I just want to lay the groundwork and give them a context in which they see that this is possible, that this is something you can do. If you take advantage of the community and like you said, the things that curious people have gotten out there and come up with all these amazing strategies. I mean, Brendan from Mad Fientist, what he's done just from a kind of a retirement plan and tax strategy advice, he's really created and then shared some really amazing concepts. And I want them to know those things as they start out on their careers and as they're making decisions about education. I want them to have the kind of fine knowledge base under their belts at that point. So yeah, I listen to the podcast when they're in the car with me and I talk a little bit. I just don't want to overwhelm them at this point. I want to give them a kind of a bare bones rudimentary version of what it's all about. And then I'll get them into the details as they get old enough to work with me on some of my real estate and some of my, I've got a recording studio that I put together. I'm also a musician and they're interested in music. I'm in that studio right now. So as we get into that side of a business as well, I'll bring them into that. Whatever their passions and their interests take them, I'm gonna put a financial independence angle on it and help them understand how to turn it into something that sustains their lifestyle.
Well, you did it. And the amount of excitement around your original post, all of the hard work, making the decisions, putting in all those hours, culminated in this moment where you said, I'm done. I did it. I am retired. This is it. And now you're on the other side of it. And we're so happy we were able to talk to you. We want to talk to you again. Before you go and before we get to the final questions, can you tell us what you think the next 5 years will look like for your family now that you've fired?
Oh, that's a good one. I've got really clear plans, in my mind about things that I want to do. A lot of it is about, kind of radical self-care, taking care of my health, my family's health, our setting up a really solid home, kind of a family situation for the kids that they, know they're loved, know that they've got options, know that they've got support at home. So I'm really going to give a lot of time and attention that maybe wasn't always there as I was working to myself, to my family, and to my house. I've been remodeling the downstairs half of my house for the last 2 years. That gave me a lot of confidence as a kind of a general contractor and carpenter that I can do this stuff. And so I'll keep doing that. I'll finish out the kind of remodeling of my house. I'm planning to build a pool and a hot tub and a patio and a fire pit out back next summer and maybe the year after that, depending on how long it takes to learn how to build all those things. So I've got a lot of fun things that I want to do, but are also things that will improve. Again, this is kind of a long-term house hack where we increase the value of our home and maybe someday we move along and convert that into additional wealth. But even for the time being, if this is our forever home, we want to make it a place that we really want to be. So I guess my 5-year plan is to turn the attention away from what I can do for a company and for millions of students, across the country, into what I can do for my family and for myself to kind of get us in really good standing for the rest of our lives. So really, I would put it under the category of radical self-care and really just kind of putting a lot of focus and a lot of energy into, making our home life as good as it can be.
Well, Dan, it has been just such a pleasure to actually talk to you. The wonderful thing about Facebook is that we get to meet virtually just so many different people that we just may not ever have met in real life, and it's just been awesome to talk to you today. We are nearing the end of our show, and on every show we ask each one of our guests a few closeout questions. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
So the first question is, what was one lesson you learned about money or finances, good or bad, growing up that you have carried over into your FIRE journey?
Well, like I said earlier, my folks were not necessarily great with money, but I did really learn important lessons from them about, hard work and working smart. I would say in particular from my dad and from my mom and my grandparents, who I worked with for a year after college, at a business that they had started. Find your customer and serve their interests. That was our entire philosophy to the small business. Your customers will tell you what your business needs if you will just listen to them with an open mind and a service mindset, not being servile or their servant or anything, but being of service, being of use to your customers will help you understand how to shape your business to be as effective as it can be. And then I learned in industry that colleagues can be customers too. The business hacks like to call them internal customers, but they're right. You do have other people you work with in an organization that are your customers that you're serving in some way, and figure out what they really need and be there to support them. And that really led me to a lot of success, just listening to people and trying to identify what their needs are and making their life easier. And that's a really good key to success in your own business.
I love that tip, and I think that that's one that just transfers, just like you said, it transfers into so many other areas of your life, whatever that it is. For us in this podcast is just really staying in tune with, what are the things that our listeners want to know, are the questions that are bringing them the most value. So I love that. That's great.
Cool.
And then what is one life hack that either has made your life easier or brings you the most joy?
I think it might be both for me. It's both made my life easier and brought me joy, and I can't overstate the value of the remodeling houses has done for me, for rentals or for house hacking, for resale later. It's really allowed me, a stable investment source on one side that really aligned perfectly with my love of remodeling old houses and carpentry. I mean, I'm the guy who in college was watching This Old House and was setting my VCR to tape Home Time episodes every day and watching them at night. So I've just always really loved building and building systems. And now it's, fully half of our net worth. So it's really enabled this opportunity to stop working for W-2 income and really focus on working with real estate and being home with my kids.
Do you document your progress with your projects? Do you kind of take before and afters and that sort of thing?
I've got pictures, but I haven't really communicated to a specific audience. I'm kind of unorthodox when it comes to audiences and writers. I mean, I'm a writer. I'm a writing professional. I've studied it for 20 years. But I really only care to write or to communicate with communities of interest, specific audiences like, the podcast groups, like the Choose FI group is a fantastic resource for just sharing ideas and talking. I have a wrestling forum. I like Iowa Wrestling because they have like the best wrestling team in the world. So I go in there and I will argue for hours on these arcane details of wrestling. But it's these communities of interest where you're talking with other expert folks and you're getting to know them. That's what brings me satisfaction as a producer of content, if you want to say that. But just as a writer, as someone who's sharing or kind of talking with folks, that's what I really dig. I'm not really interested in more broader exposure than that or, mainstream audiences. I find that the commercial interest kind of corrupts, whether it be music or writing or film or a lot of different things. The artistry of the project really gets corrupted once the financial interest gets involved. And so I've always been a little opposed to monetizing any of my artistic artistic interests.
Well, we would still love to see your project.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, absolutely. Within the community, I'm happy to share. Absolutely.
One of the things that my husband has recently found out about himself is that he's actually quite handy, which if I had
cool.
done that 25 years ago, it would have sealed it sooner.
You could have leveraged that all these times.
Right? He's done just a couple projects lately that I'm like, wow, babe, that's really amazing. He's
nice.
Right now he's currently framing out all of the windows in our house, putting frame facades around them, where it just does something to it makes it look more homey. And
cool.
And really cheap, really inexpensive, but it looks so nice.
That's awesome. And I will tell you from the husband's perspective that little, lift you give him with that attaboy, that, hey, that looks great, that's worth more than any other thanks he could get in any other way. So that's the best thing you can do when he comes to you with the project he's finished.
Well, I definitely can tell he's wanting to hear what I think.
Absolutely.
You didn't say anything about what I did.
Yep, that's it.
And is there anything that you're reading right now, and what are your takeaways from it?
My favorite read, the thing that I like to read is really just, again, it's this eclectic group of online communities of interest and expertise, whether it's film criticism or TV criticism with some sort of eye on social issues, things like that. I mean, really the art of building an argument and critical thinking, that was my trade in writing assessment. That's the focus of the writing assessments I designed for graduate school, for the ACT, for college admissions, So I really like to kind of swim in that particular milieu of just nonfiction, argument, social analysis. So it's pretty eclectic, but that's really what led me to the FIRE community as well, that kind of wide-ranging interest in different niche communities. And so I'd say it really has paid off pretty handsomely with all the knowledge I've been able to collect about FI. But of course, I'm also an English teacher, so I could list off 20 authors if I really had to. But I really do spend most of my time reading on these internet communities of interest, and I learn a lot more from them than I do from your kind of classic canon of literature or even The Economist or The Times and these kind of state-old institutions of knowledge. I find just a lot better experience and more interesting interaction from getting out there with people and communicating on specific issues and questions.
So where is a group or place that people can find you?
Facebook groups, I think. That's the best place. I'm in the House of FI Facebook group and the Choose FI Facebook group. If you just search my name, Dan Shaw, it'll come up, and you can message me, and I'm happy to engage on all sorts of related topics and questions. And I just love talking to people about this. I've been able to share a little bit with some friends. Since I made the big announcement, I kept it completely under wraps. I think my sister didn't even know that I was retiring, and so all my friends, of course, are like, "What is going on? What are you doing?" Because I had so many friends at work and I couldn't tell work, so it was all complicated. But I really enjoyed just talking with some couples that we know, and they're on their FI journey, and people are really excited about this as a different way of living, as checking out of the consumerist culture and kind of returning to some more core values.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. Again, this was so fun to talk to you, and you have just such a wonderful outlook, and we're just glad that you decided to come on the show, and we hope that our audience gets as much out of it as we did. And you are in our private Facebook group, so if anybody wants to talk to Dan, just hop on over to the private group, join there, and you can message Dan in the group. Or he's also in a couple of the other financial independence group as well, so he's pretty easy to find.
Well, thank you so much for that. You've been so kind, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing to kind of share information and spread your stories. It's, as Tamika said recently, ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and that just resonates so widely with the people in this community. So thank you guys for that mission and for what you're doing to share it.
Well, House of Five family, that brings this episode to a close. If you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe in iTunes, as well as any of the other platforms you've found us on. We're on just about all of them. Also, please leave us a written review. They help us to know what you're liking about the show, what we can do better. And for every 5 reviews we receive, that's written reviews, we will give away one of our favorite reads, and that is currently Kids' Money Habits by Amy Coit. It's a great book full of great information, both for parents and kids. Don't forget to check out our show notes on the webpage. There's always bonus information there that didn't make it to the show, and we strive to create good content on there. So please head on over to the website and check that out. Finally, you can find us on Facebook. You can either like our page or you can become part of our Facebook group. It's a private group, and in there we have ongoing discussions about each episode as well as other topics within the FI community. It's a way for us to get to know each other better and for Tamika and I to learn exactly what you want to hear more of or questions that you have that we can address with upcoming guests. Again, thank you for listening. Come back next week. We're glad you're here.